Welcome once again. I am Brian Lepask, Chief of Program Services for OPSC. With me today is Joshua Potter, Operations Manager in Program Services, and Michael Watanabe is also around here somewhere. We'll be facilitating today's meeting and helping out with any questions and answers after the presentations. Just like last time, we have some friends here from the California Department of Education. Welcome to CDE. We have Joshua Speaks with us today. Same as last meeting, he'll be presenting for CDE today. And speaking of Joshua, first on the agenda today will be turning the floor over to them, and they'll be continuing discussion on proposed amendments to the Title V regulations implementing the $5 million state augmentation of the Federal Supporting America's School Infrastructure Grant Program. CDE's goal today is to discuss the input they've received since the last meeting and get some more input and put out a little bit more information to all of you before they take their regulations forward to the State Board of Education for consideration and approval. They're going to be taking feedback today as well. So if you have anything for them subsequent to today's meeting, you'll have an opportunity to submit that to them for the next couple weeks. And then once CDE is finished, we're going to be shifting over to Vanessa Rozwadowski for continued discussion on our OPSC's proposed regulatory amendments for mandatory use of OPSC Online. We're going to be going over the feedback. We got a lot of it from the last meeting on this topic back in July. And then corresponding changes we're proposing for the regulations and forms to meet this proposal that we're putting forward. You may have noticed we did discuss in our the advertisement for today's meeting, the agenda that we sent out, that we would be having an interactive demonstration, but we're deciding instead to pivot to focus more on the regulation changes being presented. And this really also kind of ties into an announcement I wanted to make that we intend on spending a considerable amount of time over the next year or so providing dedicated time to education on OPSC Online. We've worked really hard over the last year, that's behind us now, on really beefing up and making a really comprehensive user guide for OPSC Online. And we're going to be releasing that in the near future. We're in kind of the testing phase of that right now. And we have just a little bit, I think one more sequence of testing that we're going to send it out for. And for those of you that are watching, if you've participated into that, I appreciate it very much. I know I send some emails that nag a lot, but your input's very valuable, and we've received a lot of really good feedback on our user guide. So we're going to be releasing that, and then starting next year, early in the year, we're going to, I guess we could call, what we're going to do is we're going to have like some open office hours. And the idea of that will be to present some topics that we can show you how to walk through some of the different aspects of OPSC Online, and then take any kinds of questions or input that you have during those meetings to just to further your understanding of how it all works and to make you more familiar with it leading up to mandatory usage of OPSC Online. Wanted to also mention that we already do have a lot of resources on our website. We have virtual trainings that cover all the things that we would have probably covered today in an interactive walkthrough. So those are available. And we also have a user guide already that's up on the website. We have expanded on it quite a bit, but that user guide's pretty darn good. So that's available for you too, if you wanted to go start looking at those things now. So again, thank you for being here today and spending your valuable time with us. Remember to use that Q&A function in the Zoom and or raise your hand between presentations. We're also going to be posting this recording of this meeting to the OPSC YouTube channel. Shortly after the meeting, you can go and look at it there. And you'll have plenty of time to submit questions or answers or comments to us on anything that comes up to you during this meeting, either by watching today or by watching the recording. And so with that, I am going to share my screen and I will turn it over to Mr. Speaks.
Thank you, everyone. This is our third time coming to this group. So for many people who are watching this, I know this is going to be repetitive in a lot of sections as we sort of explain what the SPSD program is. I apologize for that, but I know we'll also have some new people, and so I want to make sure everyone has the full context for the discussion today. We really appreciate all of the interest in this topic and the feedback we have gotten from folks. Like I've said in previous meetings, I just want to make it clear that even if a particular, piece of feedback, a particular suggestion was not taken, we have been discussing it all, we've been considering it all, and we really appreciate the input because it has made us look at things differently as we've gone through this process. So our goal is to discuss with you and receive input on the regulations for the Supporting Priority School Districts program, which we refer to as SPSD. And we're doing this before we start our rulemaking process with the State Board of Education, so that we can bring them kind of a thoughtful and hopefully very well put together product. And Brian, if you could actually jump to slide 3. All right, so this is kind of what we're going to go over today. Again, we're going to do some background that may be redundant for folks who have been in previous meetings. We're going to discuss the proposed regulations, and there have been a few changes there. And then we are going to give you some information on how to share any questions or comments that you may have. Now, as Brian said, we're happy to have discussion as we go through this meeting today. We're happy to take feedback live here, but we'll also be sharing an email inbox that's been set up to receive feedback on these regulations after this meeting is over. Next slide, please. So this is some quick background on how we got here. AB 247 established a state program to expand the objectives of the Supporting America's School Infrastructure Grant Program. And that legislation was ultimately funded through Prop 2 of the $10 billion in general obligation bonds for K-12 school facility repairs, upgrades, et cetera. They included $5 million for this program. And then the State Allocation Board went ahead and set aside that $5 million pursuant to the bill, so that we can provide direct technical assistance and administration. Next slide, please. Now, I want to make it clear, when we talk about a grant of money, the first thing that sort of pops into people's heads is, how do I apply to receive money? The grant was actually to the department, and the money is to fund activity by the department. So it's not a grant where CDE is going to be handing out money to school districts. It is a grant that funds CDE to provide direct technical assistance and support to school districts. And we'll get into the details of that, but I just want to make that clear at the outset. So what we've been doing so far, we've held conversations with stakeholders. This group, I think, is the largest group of stakeholders that we've had conversations with, but we've also reached out to other organizations that have an interest in supporting small school districts with their facilities needs. And we've been using these stakeholder conversations to get input on the development of our regulations. This program actually, in statute, we're required to adopt regulations in order to implement the program. We've tried to get stakeholders from a variety of backgrounds. We've tried to get a diverse set of organizations, diverse set of viewpoints, so that we can get as much feedback as possible. And we, on April 17th, was the first time we came to this group. We also came back a second time. And each time we've come back, we've iterated the regulations slightly. So that, the main shape, I think, has stayed the same. But some of the details have changed each time because our stakeholder input has helped us to shape things. And so what we have to share today is the latest draft. Next slide, please. So we've mentioned the SASE program and SPSD, and so I wanted to discuss both programs to give you a sense of how they're the same, how they're different. SASE was initiated through a grant from the federal government. And we had to go out and apply for that. And they funded it to the tune of $5 million. So there's $10 million total for supporting small schools, priority schools. The terminology is a little different between the programs. But there's $10 million total, $5 million roughly in each program. Under SASE, districts have to meet all three of the criteria for the program. And those criteria are enrollment of 2,500 or less students, an unduplicated pupil count of 50% or more, and the school district cannot have received state allocation board funding in the past decade. Now, the way that compares to the SPSD program is that districts must only meet one of four criteria. The enrollment is the same, less than 2,500. The SPSD program, the legislation that enacted it, says that the district must have a high unduplicated pupil count, but it does not define what high is. So that was one of the things left up to the department to decide. It also says that they can qualify through having low gross bonding capacity per pupil. And the range for that was also left undefined. So the bill doesn't actually define what low gross bonding capacity is. And whereas the SASE program says no state allocation board funding in the past decade, the SPSD program says that you cannot have applied for funding, state allocation board funding ever. There's no time limit on that. Now, again, you only have to meet one of these four criteria as opposed to SASE. So you might, for example, be a school district with a relatively high or a relatively low unduplicated pupil count. Maybe you have applied for state allocation board funding in the past, but because you have an enrollment of 1,200 students, you would still qualify for the program. Next slide, please. So some other differences, as we said, SASE is federally funded, SPSD is state funded. In the SASE program, we actually just went out and selected the districts ourselves. Under the SPSD program, districts must apply. They need to express interest in order to receive support. And SASE, because it was a federal grant, there weren't a lot of strings on how we implemented it. So the program was just implemented via contracts that we wrote up with agencies that were able to provide some of the manpower and technical expertise that we needed in order to support school districts. Whereas the SPSD program, as I mentioned, the statute actually requires us to adopt regulations before we can go ahead with the program, which is why we're here today. Next slide, please. So what will the SPSD program do more specifically? The funds need to be used for all of the following: direct technical assistance, state and county collaboration efforts, development of centralized online resources, and developing state-level expertise on facility maintenance. So big picture, the program will be providing direct technical assistance to small school districts who don't necessarily have the in-house expertise to manage their facility needs, to determine proper facility maintenance costs, project future facility needs, that sort of thing. The funding will also be used to get the state and county offices of education to work more closely on efforts to provide support for our school districts. When it says development of centralized online resources, that's a fancy way of saying that we are going to try to put together a database that will be accessible to everyone in the state, not just school districts that are selected for assistance under the SASE program. And that centralized database will be a collection of all of the online facility resources that we can come up with. So it may be, academic resources. It may be resources that are developed by the department. It may be that we find a local county office has developed something really handy. It may be other state agencies like OPSC that have resources. But all of that will be collected in one place so that small school districts know where they need to go to find those resources. And the last thing is the idea is that we're developing state level expertise on facility maintenance. So we have a lot of very smart facility people here at the department, but you know, the nature of the job is that as state level facility people, we have a very different perspective on the world of facility maintenance than a person who is the superintendent of a school district of 150 students. And so part of this program is that we as a department will be growing and learning alongside of the people who are receiving the direct technical assistance so that in the future we are more effective at providing support. Next slide, please. All right, so what do we mean by direct technical assistance? We mean developing and showing districts how to use tools that will determine if their school facility is in good repair, how to develop a school site inventory, how to figure out what your facility needs are, what those needs will cost, and how to determine which projects are most important, which projects can be put off for a while. One of the big things that we'll be able to help with is identifying funding options. There's been some academic work that we've relied on that has indicated that a lot of small school districts are either intimidated by some of the statewide funding programs or just don't feel like they have the expertise to navigate those programs. And so we'll be able to help determine whether districts are eligible to participate in things like the SFP program. And then helping with contracts, testing, architectural services, construction contracts, things like that as well. Again, this is from the perspective of the school district where the superintendent also has to be the dedicated facilities person because the district may not have the size, the resources to have dedicated folks for those kind of specialized areas. Next slide, please. So our next step will be adopting regulations. And as we said, the statute actually requires us to do this. And it indicates that we have to regulate in at least these 4 areas. The process for determining who gets the technical assistance, the framework for state and county efforts to collaborate with each other, regulations around the development and accessibility of those online resources that we were talking about earlier, and reporting and accountability measures to make sure that we are using the funds that we've been given by the state of California wisely. We could, next slide, please. So if you'll remember, I said that the legislation, 2 of the threshold categories for determining eligibility for the program are left undefined. That's high unduplicated pupil count and low bonding capacity. So we took a really simple, straightforward approach to determining what high and low means. For high unduplicated pupil count, we looked at the statewide average of unduplicated pupil count, and it's around 66%. And so we determined that high unduplicated pupil count means anything that exceeds 66%. Anything below that statewide average is considered low unduplicated pupil count, and so would not qualify you or a district for eligibility in the program. Now, again, just bear in mind that you only need to meet 1 of the 4 eligibility criteria. So if you're in a district that has UPC of 64%, but you're 1,200 pupils, then you would still be able to participate in the program. Now, per pupil bonding capacity, we're defining low per pupil bonding capacity as meaning less than 3,200 per student. Anyone who is paying attention to the regulations before will note that that is a lower threshold. Before, I think it was around 5,500. Per pupil bonding capacity is not something that's tracked at a state level as closely as unduplicated pupil count is. It's not something that districts are reporting every year like they are with their unduplicated pupil count. So the way that we've determined that is we were able to get sort of a sampling And the first sample that we got of small school districts, the average, the midpoint of those districts was around 5,500, 5,400. But then we were able to get a slightly larger sample. And when we got that larger sample, the midpoint actually dropped to around 32. I think I said 5,400 before. I meant 54,000. Dropped to 32,000 per student. And operating on the assumption that a larger sample size is going to generally produce a more accurate picture, as long as there are no sort of mitigating factors. We changed the threshold in the regulations to match that larger sample size, the average. Next slide, please. So just again, to reiterate, to qualify, you need an enrollment of fewer than 2,501 pupils, or an enrollment of or a high percentage of unduplicated pupil count, low gross bonding capacity, or have not previously submitted an application for funding pursuant to the SFP. And it's any one of those four. Next slide, please. So we are further operating under the assumption that the number of interested districts will probably exceed the capacity of the program. We don't actually have a firm idea of what program capacity is going to be yet. I think we'll have a better sense of that once we get started with the work and once we see what our pool of applicants looks like. But on the assumption that we are going to have more districts interested in receiving the assistance than we have funding for, we are going to use a weighted scoring selection process. And one of our operating sort of parameters for designing these regulations is that we are trying to maintain consistency with other sections of the Ed Code relating to school facilities funding. And so we used a lot of the sort of categories and information from Ed Code section 17070.59 in order to, along with what's in the statutes enabling this program, in order to create that weighted scoring system. As part of that application and weighted scoring system, we are going to have only one application period. And the only reason we would open up an additional application period would be if we were actually undersubscribed rather than oversubscribed. As long as we get more interested districts than we have capacity for, we won't be opening any new application periods. So even though we have several years to expend the funding, we would take those programs and we would sort of phase in the technical assistance over the period that we have to expend the funding. Once districts apply, they won't need to reapply. So even if we were to have to open a second application period, districts will not have to reapply. Their information is going to be maintained. Next slide, please. All right, so what is our weighted scoring going to look like? We're using the four categories that are used to determine eligibility, threshold eligibility for the program. They're also going to be the four categories that we're using to determine scoring for purposes of ranking schools for technical assistance. And we got a lot of really good input from folks about other data points that we could use. There were some really creative ideas out there. Everything from, bathrooms per student to how many portables are on a site. All these really good proxies that can indicate that a school is struggling with various facilities needs. But ultimately, when you're adopting regulations, we have to hew to the statute or have something that's defensible within the statutory framework. And so we decided to stick with these criteria. So So what we did, again, we're trying to keep things simple and understandable for everyone. We took the entire universe of schools in California that have 2,500 students or less, so all the schools who meet that enrollment eligibility criteria, and we simply divided them up into quartiles. Now, these quartiles aren't exactly even because you may have 5 schools all with 1,000 students enrolled, and there's no way to sort of divide between them. But these are roughly equal quartiles. So first quartile of 1 to 125 students would receive 4 points. Second quartile from 126 to 380 gets 3 points. 381 to 1,000 gets 2 points. 1,001 to 2,500 will receive 1 point. If you're beyond 2,500 students, then again, you may still be eligible to participate in the program based on the other criteria, but you wouldn't be getting any points for enrollment. And the reason for that, and sort of the guiding principle behind most of these decisions, most of these prioritization decisions, is we're trying to assess based on district need, right? And so the assumption there is that a smaller school district is going to have less administrative capacity and is going to have more need for technical assistance. And as a district gets larger, they're going to have a little bit of greater administrative capacity, and therefore they're going to have a little bit more ability to kind of handle these things on their own. So, for example, if you're a school district with 125 or less students, you probably have a principal / superintendent, right? Whereas if you're a school district with 2,500 students, then you're going to have multiple administrators, that can be working on these sorts of things. Now, there are other schools of thought. Just to give an example for purposes of kind of trying to spur a conversation, one of the arguments that we considered was you might want to prioritize larger school districts, because by prioritizing larger school districts, you're potentially helping more students. If you straighten out all the facilities needs for a school district with 100 students in it, you've helped 100 students. If you straighten out all the facilities needs for a school district with 1,000 students in it, you've helped 1,000 students. So there are other ways that you can look at this, and we are happy to hear folks' reactions to either of those schools of thoughts or any other ideas that you may have. But that's just kind of an idea of how we're coming at it. Next slide, please. Okay, so low gross bonding capacity per enrollment. What we've done here is we've actually taken this spread of numbers right from that statute that I mentioned earlier, the 17070.59. Again, we're trying to sort of respect legislative intent around school district facility needs. And since the legislature has used that in other places, we feel like it's an appropriate set of categories to use for this program as well. So in this category, you can get up to 8 points. If you'll notice, the last category, the enrollment was only 4 points. The reason this is 8 and that is 4 is because we think that this is a more direct measure of a school district's ability to meet their facilities and maintenance needs, because your gross bonding capacity directly impacts how much you can raise in terms of funds, your ability to issue a bond to match state funds, things like that. So if your gross bonding capacity divided by the district's total enrollment is less than $10,000 per student, if it's in that 0 to 9,999 range, then you get 8 points. 10,000 to 19,999, you get 6 points. 20 to 54.99, you get 4 points. And above 55,000, you get 2 points. Next slide, please. Unduplicated pupil count. Again, this category only gets 4 points, and that's because we think it's a good measure of need, but it's not a direct measure of facilities need. The assumption here is that if you have a higher um, percentage of unduplicated pupils, then you are probably spending a lot of your state funding on on the needs of those pupils, and you have less funding available for less direct ways of meeting their needs, like your facilities maintenance costs or the costs of new facilities. And again, we took this spread straight out of statute. So it's 75 to 100% UPC, you get 4 points. 50 to 74.99, you get 3. 25 to 49.99, you get 2. And 0 to 24.99, you get 1 point. Next slide, please. Okay. The last category, again in statute, it talked about one of the eligibility criteria is that you have not previously submitted a funding for SF or an application for SFP funding. And we assign this category 8 points because, again, we feel like this is a very direct measure of a district's facilities needs. And the assumption that goes into this one is that districts that have not submitted an application for SFP funding usually have not done so because they have been unable or unwilling to navigate that process. They felt that they found the process intimidating, or they didn't know how to collect some of the information that's required for that process. And so we see that as a pretty direct measure of their facilities needs. And unfortunately, this isn't a category where you can really stage out the points. You either get 8 points for having no prior applications or 0 points for having a prior application. One of the things, again, just to sort of throw out some alternatives for discussion or provoking any thoughts you may have, one of the alternatives that was considered would be to assign 8 points for districts that have not applied, 4 points for districts that have not or that have applied but didn't receive funding. The idea there being that, even if you were able to navigate the application process, that if you didn't receive funding, you're still measurably worse off than a district that did receive funding. But ultimately, at the moment, we're going with just the 8 or 0. Next slide, please. So before we move on, I'd like to give anyone who wants to a chance to ask questions or comment on that piece, because that was a lot of information delivered fairly quickly. So we'll take a pause. And then, Brian, did you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. We do have one question. It's from Jeff Becker, and the question is, how will a district that applies know if they are within or without of program capacity?
Good question. So we're going to go over the application process next, but the short version of it is that once that filing window is closed, we'll go ahead and we will score everyone. We are going to have a pretty rough idea by that point of what our capacity will be like, because the SASE program, since it was funded earlier, it's starting earlier. And since the technical assistance and things like that we'll be providing is very similar between the programs, we'll have a little bit better of an idea of how many schools we'll be able to fund. And so we will be notifying districts, hey, you're eligible, and we've prioritized you to get funding in year 2, or we're planning on getting to you in year 3, that sort of thing.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions right now. We'll give everybody just a second if they'd like to raise their hand. Or again, you could put your question into the Q&A function in Zoom. We'll give it just a few seconds. Go ahead.
And please remember, everyone, if you've got sort of a half-formulated question or you've got some half-formulated suggestions, we're going to be giving you an email address at the end. I would love to get 80 emails after this is over, because I feel like the more input we get, the better our final product is going to be. So if you are a little hesitant to speak up right now, please, don't feel at all shy about using that email and sending us your thoughts afterwards.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment, so I think we can continue.
Okay. So moving on to the application process. The way we see it, there are some challenges that small school districts have, and we are trying to come up with solutions to those challenges. So the biggest challenges are that often priority school districts have limited capacity for complicated application processes. And the one sort of, statutorily required piece of this that CDE doesn't have easy and constantly updated access to is district bonding capacity data. Other things like enrollment, obviously districts are reporting enrollment to us every year. Same thing goes with, unduplicated pupil count. And our friends at OPSC can tell us who's applied for their program and who hasn't. So our solution to that process is to create as simple an application process as we can. There is going to be one letter that's required to be submitted. That letter is signed by the superintendent or their authorized designee. It's going to have minimal information requirements. We will, as part of publicizing our application process, announcing it ahead of time, we will put out a sample letter. I want to make it clear it's a sample, not a required letter. So a district that turns in a letter with slightly different verbiage or, phrasing things differently, as long as they've got all the required pieces, they're going to be just fine. The sample letter will just be so that districts have something that they can use if they need to. And really the only requirements are going to be, we're going to ask for things like your CDS code, so that we can make sure if there's two, Mountain Hill Unified School Districts in the state that we're not confusing one for the other. We're going to have that superintendent or authorized designee to agree to provide the information that we're going to need to operate the program and to assess the effectiveness of the program. And we're going to need districts to provide their bonding capacity because that's the one thing that we don't have ready access to. But other than that, we're going to make this process as simple as possible. We're going to accept applications by email or by paper within that 60-day filing window. And we've actually defined it in the regs so that emails can be received up to midnight on the 60th day, and paper submissions just have to be postmarked by the 60th day. So even if one or two trickle in after the deadline, as long as they're postmarked, districts are good to go. Next slide, please. So again, just sort of to summarize that process, districts have to meet at least one of the 4 criteria. We'll use weighted scoring, and we will keep the application process as simple as possible. Next slide, please. So framework for state and county collaboration. That's a very elaborate way of saying that we are going to try to work with LEAs and especially work through county offices because, they have a much better idea of what's going on in their particular counties than we do. They have a much better communications network with their local school districts than we do. So all LEAs will be able to participate in this network that we'll be putting together, not just folks who are receiving the direct technical assistance. In fact, we would encourage LEAs who aren't receiving direct technical assistance to participate because, if one of the big purposes of this network is that we're all learning from each other, that works best when you have a wider variety of districts involved. We'll be notifying people of meetings in advance. We'll be holding these meetings potentially organized by geographic regions. That's to be determined by the department. The idea is that hopefully this network will grow over time. And so maybe at first, if we've only got a few participating districts and counties, we just have some statewide meetings. And then as the network grows, ideally we would be able to sort of divide things up into geographic regions so that districts can focus on issues that may be specific to them. So, for example, maybe you're in a region, you're on the coast, and wildfires aren't a big deal for you because your climate is fairly wet. But another network may be in a region that's pretty dry, and so wildfire safety and wildfire prevention is a maintenance need that they have, and they can discuss best practices while you're discussing, how to remediate salt damage to your buildings, or whatever those geographic needs might be. Those meetings are going to be held quarterly in partnership with both the Division of State Architect and OPSC. And we are going to make those meetings sort of a hybrid, kind of like the meeting today, where you can attend in person or remotely. One of our goals is to host those at different locations around the state so that, even if you can't attend every meeting in person, you don't have to have a huge travel budget to at least attend one or two meetings in person. Next slide, please. So, online resources. We're going to make this database accessible from CDE's website. That's the best way we can think of to make sure that it's accessible to the widest number of users. It will have free access to any LEA. Again, you don't have to participate in the program to get access. We are going to retain the right to require user registration if we think it's necessary. That would have a simple application process. It would be, give us your name, give us your school district, give us your email. That's about it. And the idea there is that if, again, this, the user base for this grows, and if our resources library gets large enough and comprehensive enough, we may be able to sort of customize your experience to the challenges that you're facing. So again, if you're in an area that's just undergone a pretty serious wildfire, maybe when you log in, we'll be directing you to resources on rebuilding after wildfire damage. If you're in an area that's just suffered an earthquake, maybe we have some resources on earthquake safety, building remediation, things like that you'll automatically be directed to. But again, the main things to take away, any LEA can use it, and there will not be a charge. Next slide, please. So reporting and accountability. We are going to be requiring annual reports starting next year in July, so July 2026, and then each July thereafter until the funds are exhausted. And then a final summary report will be due, I think it's December 31st of 2030, which is when we will have used up the funds. Those reports will contain information on our operations. So things like how much the funds went to administration, how much of it went to direct technical assistance, how much of it went into developing the website. We're going to be trying to measure the impact. So that's number of districts that we've served, number of sites that we've visited, number of buildings that we've assessed. Obviously, you may go to one district that has a single school site. You may go to another district that has 10. So we want to get down past the district level data and get to actual site and building data. And then, and this is why we, as part of the application process, we're going to require superintendents to agree to provide us with information. We're going to be asking folks to fill out pre and post assessment surveys so that as we're going year to year, we can fine tune that technical assistance process based on the feedback that we're receiving from districts. How helpful is what we're doing? What could we be doing differently? What services are we not offering that we should offer, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll include that in those legislative reports so that the legislature can also see how effective we're being, how things are changing as we move forward with the program. Next slide, please. All right, so I wanted to stop one more time and just ask for any discussion, any suggestions, any comments, questions that folks may have. And actually, while we're doing that, instead of staying on this slide, Brian, can you move to the last slide?
Sure.
While folks are thinking about whether or not they want to speak up in the meeting, I just wanted to throw this email up on the screen. It's spsd@cde.ca.gov. This is where you can follow up with more input if you choose to do so. We're giving a deadline of next week on the 15th, so that gives you a week next Wednesday to give us your input. We'll take input after that, but we just can't guarantee that it's going to be timely enough to shape the regulations because we are trying to move this rulemaking package forward pretty soon here. But if you have any input that you don't want to give today, please reach out via that email address.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, that was a lot of really great information. Thank you very much. We do have one question. I'll read it out to you. It's from April Thompson. She says, just for clarification, SASE is limited to small school districts, but SPSD is not. Is that correct? Small school districts will receive 1 to 4 priority points, but if a non-small school district meets one of the other criteria, it can apply to participate. She's asking.
Yes, that is correct. The way the legislation was written, you only have to meet one of those 4 criteria. So a school district, I mean, the program is really intended for those, what we're calling priority school districts, but a larger school district can apply, and potentially if they have a significant enough need, they could receive technical assistance as well.
Okay. Thank you. Great question, April. That's a good one for everybody to hear. All right, we got Joshua and CD just for a few more minutes. So, if you have any questions, now's the time. You can put it into the Q&A, or if you'd like to raise your hand, we could unmute you and you could ask verbally. It's up to you guys. I'm going to give it just a little bit of time here. In the meantime, I'm going to switch my screen over though. Okay, seeing nothing. So
we're assuming the program's amazing and everyone loves it.
That's exactly what I always say, Joshua. That's exactly what I always say. It's a great presentation. Nobody has any questions because it was crystal clear. That's how I choose to look at it. I think a lot of times people just like to think about it and they might send it in later. But all kidding aside, that was a lot of really great information. And thanks again for coming to our meeting today and last time as well. We really appreciate the shared collaboration and yeah, it's reaching a good audience, I think, out there. So really appreciate your time.
Thank you for hosting.
Absolutely. Okay, with that, we're going to be moving into proposed regulatory amendments for mandatory use of OPSC Online. I will be turning it over to Vanessa, and I'm going to share my screen right now. There we go.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Can everyone hear me all right?
Sounds good.
Perfect. As Brian mentioned, I'm Vanessa, and today I will be walking us through our continued discussion of the proposed regulatory amendments to require all document submittals related to SAB administered programs to be completed using the OPC online system. Specifically, the school facility program, the California Preschool Transitional Kindergarten Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Program, and the school site's non-use payments program. Throughout this item, these programs will be referred to as the SFP, the FTK program, and the unused sites program, respectively. The statutory authority for today's topic can be found on attachment B1A on page 11 of the agenda item. However, we can begin our discussion starting with page 1. At the July 24th stakeholder meeting, OPC introduced the topic to propose the mandatory use of OPC Online for all SAB administered programs. At this meeting, we focused on the regulatory amendments for the SFP as a representative example of our intended approach to update regulations and forms across all programs. The entirety of the stakeholder item and recording are both linked in the background section of this item, For anyone who either missed it or loved it and wants to revisit it, it's there for you. Today's presentation will expand upon the information presented at that previous meeting and introduce the proposed regulatory amendments and form updates for now the FTK program and the unused sites program. Additionally, we will be addressing the various stakeholder feedback received both from the prior stakeholder meeting and from testers of the updated OPSC Online user guide. Stakeholder feedback letters in response to the July 24th meeting are included in this item as attachment B1H. Okay, and so perfect. You're in the right place, Brian. We're going to start on page 2 to look at the stakeholder feedback. As always, OPSC would like to express our gratitude to everyone who has been and continues to be part of these ongoing discussions. Your feedback is incredibly valuable and integral to OPSC's policy development. And overall, the feedback that we received was primarily concerning potential enhancements to OPSC Online. If you take a quick glance at the feedback table on the page, you'll see that there are quite a few responses that simply read, OPSC is exploring the feasibility of implementing this functionality into OPSC Online. And so that is just to say that you all had really great ideas, and we are looking into all possibilities to ensure that OPSC Online is a positive user experience. Please also note that the recommended edits to the OPSC Online user guide are not captured in this item, but have been noted for future revisions of the guide. For now, I'll briefly touch on a few stakeholder comments in the table that necessitated a more detailed response other than we're looking into it. So scrolling down to comment number 2, the stakeholder recommends OPSC Online implement a receipt confirmation system. OPSC is exploring this functionality, but in the meantime, would like to advise users that the current status of submitted forms is displayed on the user's dashboard and on each application's management page. These statuses range from anything like OPSC's reviewing, 5005 reviewing, ARBA, for any applications that are on the applications received beyond bond authority list, SAB approved, submitted, and more. So districts can get a general idea of where status of their application just by looking at these statuses on their application pages. For comment number 4, the stakeholder has noted instances of duplicate or inactive school site listings in OPSC Online. OPSC is exploring options for these affected districts. However, districts are advised to contact their assigned project manager to correct any known inaccuracies in the site listings. A complete list of the district's program sites is available under the district tab and the manage sites subsection. And for each site, there is a corresponding CDSS number. So you can kind of understand which one is actually your district site. Comment number 5 inquires that if our system has the capacity to handle increased traffic and usage. And so have no fear. The answer is yes. We have verified that the system is equipped to handle the anticipated volume of traffic and usage should the proposed regulations go into effect. Comment number 6 is regarding the functionality of OPSC Online on mobile devices. Although OPSC Online was not designed for mobile use, staff have reported routine success accessing the system using tablets as an alternative to laptops or desktops while traveling or while away from their offices. So for anyone that's having trouble kind of using OPSC Online on their phone, try using a tablet and see if that enhances your experience. For comment number 7, the stakeholder reports difficulty for architects and design staff to access OPSC Online and certify their required forms. In response, OPSC does encourage users to refer to the step-by-step instructions in the updated user guide for clear direction on how architects and design teams certify applications. Our staff is also happy to assist and answer or troubleshoot any questions the user may have. For comment number 8, several stakeholders requested enhancements to the current enrollment projection calculator on the OPSC Online system. OPSC is working with our developer team to allow for multiple year projections in OPSC Online, but in the meantime, we have provided a link to the standalone calculator in DGS apps. This workaround was actually suggested by one of our stakeholders. So thank you very much for that contribution and the help you were providing to everyone. Comment number 9 requests that the prompt "You may now complete and submit an SAB Form 5005" does not populate until after an apportionment has approved. OPSC acknowledges that this prompt may merit a help text to advise users of when a valid 5005 must be submitted. So we'll look into adding one of those in one of our future enhancements. Comment number 10 requests that all uploads appear under each linked form for any given application. OPSC advises stakeholders to review the All Uploaded Documents tab to view all documents that have been submitted for the given application. So this function is available on the left-hand side wizard when you're looking at your application. You just scroll down and you can see all of the documents for any kind of form related to that application. Comment number 16 requests that the grant agreement be added as a document option under the linked fund release when uploading files. And so in response, OPSC states that grant agreements are not currently a document upload option because they have their own existing module, which rarely requires the submittal of an actual uploaded PDF. A known exception to this is the FDK program, in which grant agreements are emailed to the district and subsequently uploaded to OPSC Online by OPSC staff. If a user experiences difficulty trying to locate their grant agreement on OPSC Online, please reach out to your assigned project manager and we'll be happy to assist. And lastly, comment number 17 reports an inability to proceed to the form SAB 5002 before completing the 5001. OPSC advises the stakeholder that this is the intended application flow and that data from the 5001 is necessary to populate the 5002 in OPSC Online. Additionally, if the user is experiencing difficulty in submitting an application or it has an inability to press the actual button for submitting, it may be because the user is not an authorized representative and only authorized district representatives may submit forms to OPSC Online on behalf of the district. And so with that, we've finished reviewing the stakeholder feedback. I'll take a moment now to pause and see if there are any questions.
Not seeing any thus far. We can wait a sec here and see if any pop in though.
Sounds good.
All right, I'm not seeing anything. I think we can just continue.
Okay, perfect. So we'll actually jump on over to page 13 so that we can take a look at the proposed regulations for the school facility program. Great, thank you. Staff is proposing minor edits since our last stakeholder meeting. These changes include amending the proposed effective date of the required use of OPSC Online from July 1st, 2026 to January 1st, 2027. So a little bit more time. Additionally, definitions to the form SAB 5775 and the 5801 have also been updated to specify submittal through OPSC Online. Although these forms do not have designated wizard flows programmed into OPSC Online, it's noted that they should be uploaded as supporting documentation for a form SAB 5004 when applicable. And so the 5775 is required documentation with the Natural Disaster Assistance application, and the form SAB 5801 for a facility hardship seismic mitigation application for replacement funding. Additionally, the section 1859.90.2 for priority funding process has been updated to remove references to forms requiring an original signature, as that implies the submittal of a physical form. Any questions on SFP regulations?
Not seeing any. So those are the only changes we made since last time.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Yeah, just minor adjustments since the last meeting.
Yep.
Yeah, and as Vanessa noted, we're proposing that OPSC Online become mandatory January 1st of 2027. So that's roughly 14 months from now. And like I mentioned earlier, we're planning a series of educational events throughout next year. We'll be scheduling them and mapping them out and sharing that information with you later. But we anticipate doing a lot of those, and they'll cover a wide range of subjects. We'll probably look at some of the more popular workload or workflows, but we'll also have a portion of those meetings will be dedicated to just open questions and time for you to ask about anything that might be on your mind or that you might have you might have some questions about or want to see a walkthrough of. So again, we'll be getting those out to you, and then those dates and times out to you when we have them, and also our updated user guide, which has been updated a lot. Believe me, it's about 1,000 pages. It's a lot of really good information with tons of screenshots and step-by-step guide for most of the workflows in OPSC Online. We'll be releasing that in the coming months, probably also right about the first of the year once we complete testing for that. So we're working hard on that in the background. We want to really make sure that we're providing the support that you need transitioning into mandatory OPSC Online. And so we're going to be making big efforts to complete that and make sure that there is that component and that things we can post online to resources and other things that would help you if it's your first time at OPSC Online, if you're unfamiliar with the database. Vanessa, did you have anything else to cover today, or was that it?
Did. I was going to walk us through the rest of the forums and the other programs. So I'll just, not too much. It'll go pretty quickly for those of you that are tired. Don't worry.
No problem. We got plenty of time. Plenty of time.
Okay. We can go ahead and move on to page 17, Brian. So attachment B1C is proposed amendments to all SFP forms. Last time we just presented the 5004, and this time we have the proposed language for the 5001, the 5002, 5003, 5005, 5006, 5009, and 5010. So you can take a look at that when you have a chance, but the language is all the same as what was presented on the 5004 at the last meeting. And then we will just continue on from there to the FDK program on page 26. Great. These regulations will largely mirror what was presented to the SFP regulations, but just to give you a little breakdown of what exactly has changed, you'll see in the definitions, there's the proposed amendment to require submittal of all FDK forms and supporting documentation electronically through OPSC Online beginning January 1st, 2027. We have a proposed amendment to the definitions that define OPSC Online, and amended references to the various forms to indicate that all submissions must be done through the OPSC Online system. Section 1860.3 specifies that all necessary documents as defined by approved applications shall be filed through OPSC Online. Section 1860.3.1 is the establishment of a new regulation section to provide guidance to the submittal of applications through OPSC Online and the process for what to do when OPSC Online is inaccessible. We scroll down to page 27. Again, similar to the amendments to the SFP 5004 from the last meeting, we have the same amendments only to the 7001, which is the application for funding for FTK, the 7002, which is the fund release authorization, and the 7003, which is the expenditure report. These are just amendments to require OPSC Online submittal and to update outdated PTN and plans and specification references. Okay, and continuing on to page 30, our last program of the bunch, we have the proposed amendments to the unused site program regulations. A proposed new section in 1864.2.1 addresses the submittal of applications through OPSC Online. This section provides guidance for which application documents and formal correspondence would be subject to this requirement, as well as the submittal processes for when OPSC Online is inaccessible. Additionally, throughout the unused site program regulations, OPSC proposes technical cleanup to align with the program's relocation in statute as Education Code sections 17219 through 17223, and to amend gender-specific pronouns referring to the OPSC executive officer. And finally, we have the corresponding proposed amendments to the regulatory forms on pages 34 and 35. Thank you, Brian. Again, these just simply include instructions to submit all required forms and supporting documents through OPSC Online. And so I told you it would be fast. That really about wraps up OPSC Online for now. As Brian previously mentioned, please stay tuned for the official release of our updated user guide, as well as our anticipated OPSC Online education series early next year. As always, we welcome any and all feedback on this topic, and we'll be receiving stakeholder letters until not next Friday, 2 Fridays, October 24th. Are there any other questions at this time?
We do have a couple questions. I'm going to start into them in just a sec here. Thank you, Vanessa. Let's see. Amy Meenan asks, curious about how these changes may affect communications from OPSC on day letters and sharing of documentation. I think, Amy, that's a good question. We should be following the same protocols we do right now for sending letters out. I don't think we're going to be sending them through OPSC Online or anything like that, if that's what you're asking. We do plan to continue to send our letters through email and make sure that they get to you in a timely fashion. Your responses, though, anything that you're going to respond with, you can also email it back and or upload it if there's documents that are being requested. So I don't think there'll be too many changes to that. We'll think about that a little bit more, and if there are some changes, we'll make note of them and make sure we get that information out to you. But I think that process will largely remain unaffected. Okay, and then we have another question. It says, it's a little bit long, so bear with me here. It says, for the new construction and modernization eligibility update submittals, will PDFs of the SAB 5001 and SAB 5003 be accepted in lieu of completing the fillable online forms? That's the first part of the question. Our intent is to require those forms to be filled out and submitted through OPSC Online. If you're experiencing difficulty with that or you're unable to get it to work, you can contact us and we can troubleshoot it with you, maybe walk you through it. But the intent is to make those doable through OPSC Online and require them to be submitted that way. The second half of that question, for example, if the 5001 districts for the 5001, districts often run into many different projections before picking the best one on the enrollment projection calculator, which generates downloadable PDFs. To submit via OPSC Online, would this data need to be re-entered into the fillable format, or would OPSC accept the 5001 that was generated using the enrollment projection calculator? Really good question. That's something that we're currently working on. We're trying to carry over that same functionality into OPSC Online so that you're able to do those different projections and look at all the different options you might have for, say, alternative weighting or adding dwelling unit augmentations, birth rate data, information like that, and not having to re-enter it every single time. I know right now that's not the case. You can do that in the enrollment projection calculator, but we are moving that functionality over to OPSC Online. We're in the midst of that right now. So we should have that available well in advance of making OPSC Online mandatory. It's something that we should be wrapping it up pretty soon, I hope. So that is something that we plan to have functional in OPSC Online. All right, seeing no other questions at the moment, I'll give it a little bit more time. I know this is it's a big change. We recognize that and acknowledge it. But we've spent over 7 years now developing OPSC Online. We have meetings almost every day of the week on improving the features, looking at different programming options, troubleshooting things, making enhancements to the program. We get feedback all the time from people, even if we aren't seeking it through official channels. We get informal feedback all the time, and we take all of that in and we consider all of it. We really do spend a lot of time on it. We are getting to the point now, though, where OPSC Online it functions for nearly everything that we do. And we're bridging that gap all the time when we pick up new programs. Like the new programs we have in Proposition 2, we're working on creating those workflows and creating all that functionality in OPSC Online right now. So one of the reasons why we're waiting another year or so to make it mandatory is to ensure that we have all of that functionality and that it's working the way that you would expect it to, and that it's working in a way that is easy to maneuver through and easy to use. It's also the reason why we are producing so much resource material, updating our user guide, which will be updated on a constant basis, by the way. We're going to be updating that. I don't know exactly how often, but we're going to be updating it as we go. It'll be a living document that we update all the time as things change and we make improvements. And also the reason why we're going to do that educational series to make sure that everybody has that support they need to be able to use it successfully. So not seeing other, Amy has her hand raised. I'm going to call on her right now. All right, Amy, go ahead.
Hi, Brian.
Hey.
I had a couple questions. Do you all have any plans to allow representatives to toggle or make old documents inactive, like if they've been superseded? Like I may have uploaded something, but then I needed to revise it, and I'd like to be able to somehow indicate that the previous version is no longer relevant.
Typically, and somebody can jump in here if I don't get this quite right, but when you create a new version of a form, you can there's a function in OPSC Online that says duplicate as draft. And when you duplicate that and you submit a new version of that form, when it's actually submitted, it should supersede the former version of that. So, and you'll see that on the project dashboard or on the application screen dashboard, you'll actually be able to see the versions move down as being superseded, and then which one is the most current version. So that should be working, and that we should have that functionality.
Sure, understood. But beyond forms, like other types of documents that are uploaded.
Oh, got you. Yeah, you can add you could rename them and add them to superseded, or you can contact us and we can remove them if they're no longer applicable. There's a few ways we can handle that. Basically, just get in touch with us and we can take care of it for you.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
And I was just curious if you all had considered providing a way to look at an entire application's life cycle and all of the documents that may be attached to, that application.
Yeah, anything that's uploaded to that actual application record will be maintained there. We also have an area where you can upload, I guess what you might call district-wide documents or documents that might apply to more than one application. You can either upload them to each application, or you can upload it to there's a general upload area where you can upload documents as well. And so if they're uploaded to that general area, I don't know if there's a way to link it to a specific application, but you can always put it in both places if you want it there, so that it's in the general, and then also if it's linked to a specific application or multiple applications, you could upload it to each one of those records.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. That was all of my questions for now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. There's a question from Walter. It reads, apologies if this has already been addressed, but is there any thought going into making the O1 projection calculator connected with DataQuest or similar enrollment database that would allow districts to click a button for historic enrollment rather than entering enrollments by grade for each scenario? Another really good question. Thank you, Walter. We did at one time look into connecting the databases. It sounds like it might be simple, but it's actually very, very complicated. And also the timing of that data, it doesn't always align. And so I don't know if we're going to ever have where we're going to be able to import it. But we are working on an enhancement, or we've thought about an enhancement and how to create that functionality where older data is stored and then populated forward. So, for example, if you have a 5001 that came in last year and you have your historical enrollment on that form, the next year or the year after that, the idea would be to be able to import that data from the older form and then just kind of bridge the gap. So we are definitely looking into that. It's something that we've been exploring for some time, and we're trying to figure out exactly how to do that. But that's definitely something that we want to do. We want to be able to import that. You know, if it's already been entered in OPSC Online, we'll retain it and then import it. The other thing about DataQuest, somebody's just reminding me, is that it only goes back 10 years now. And so it wouldn't be totally complete. Like if you're doing a 10-year projection, you would need, I think, 17 prior years. And so we'd have that issue too. But again, the idea is for us to program into OPSC Online where if you've entered data into our database, it'll retain it and repopulate it in future years. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there, you guys. If you haven't been in OPSC Online, it's really awesome. I mean, there's so much functionality. There's maybe a little bit of a learning curve, like with anything or any new software. You haven't been into it a lot, but once you have done a few submittals and you kind of get the hang of where everything's at, it's really, really useful. I might have a biased point of view, but I really think it's I use a lot of different software, and it's really, really well done. So we have great developers here. Okay, this is your last chance. I'm going to give it like 2 minutes. We're kind of winding down today. Thank you for everyone that did spend some time with us today. As always, I appreciate it. We've had a lot of meetings this year, and our attendance is pretty consistent, and I see a lot of familiar names every time. I really appreciate all of you guys' time and efforts, and offering the questions and offering all the feedback that you offer. Like I've said many times before, it really helps us to create the best programs and also the just the best process that we possibly can do. And our goal is always to make it easy for you. So it's very helpful. We do have one other question. Has there been an increase in the file upload size limit? I'm not aware if we have a limit. If we do, it's probably pretty big. I think Michael's gonna chime in.
25 to megabyte to 50 megabyte limit. It's pretty substantial. But if you have a file that size, we can do 1 of 2 of. We can split files up, or we can provide a link to an external SharePoint site that we can upload larger file sizes where it's not really capped. But let us know if you have a large file. We can take a look at it and see what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, see nothing else. As always, if you have any feedback that you think of later today, or next week, or you're watching this not live but you're watching it on the YouTube channel, please feel free to send in information to us. We love to hear it. There's lots of ways to do it. You can email it to one of us, or you can email it to our comms team. There's contact information in our items, and we really appreciate any sort of feedback or information that we receive from you. Nice to be here with you today. I hope you have a wonderful day. Happy Friday Eve, and I hope you have a great weekend, and we will see you very soon. Thank you.